What's up, everybody? We're here live on Instagram and YouTube reading part 3, Suck Up the Purple Buttermilk by Donald Otis Steiger. Great author, great book, taking us through the journey of addiction and recovery. It is a heavy read, so brace yourselves. I recommend going back and watching part 1 and part 2 on my YouTube channel at The One Who Cares. The link will be in the description, and also I will be linking his personal YouTube channel and the link to this book in the description as well. He has 2 books out. One is Suck Up the Purple Buttermilk, where you can find a link to in the description. Buy it on Amazon. Great to buy the book. Tons of cool pictures in here, and it's a good copy just to have and give out to, people who are going through their own battles of addiction and recovery, because there's a powerful message in this book that we will hopefully get to soon. But for now, brace yourselves. It could be a bumpy ride. We're going to be starting off where we left off. Chapter 5. The title is The Vicious Cycle. And we're just going to jump right into it. The Vicious Cycle. You can have this stupid life. You can have this town. The more I try to understand, the farther I go down. These are poems at the beginning of the chapters that Donnie wrote. So, very, very interesting start to the chapter. When I got out of jail, I moved into a rooming house in Greenfield, owned by a woman having the notable name of Isabel Fairhurst. Her husband had been a bigwig, big shot politician genius who died and left her a lot of property. She invited me to come and live in her barn. Every morning, I would go in the house and talk to her. She always had a bottle of whiskey hidden under her pillow. She used to love to listen to us playing music in the barn. It was while living there that my drug use took off big time. Sometimes I was dancing on speed for 2 or 3 days straight, and other times I would see images or hear voices which were not even there. Often talking nonstop to no one for hours. I also began partying with a black dude I met in jail who looked like Jimi Hendrix. One day he took out some droppers because in those days junkies shot drugs using eyedroppers. We would roll up a cut from a dollar bill and put it on the tip of the dropper. We then put a needle on the end of the bill and stuck it into our arm. If you hit a vein, you saw a flag, which meant a red ball of blood in the dropper signifying paid dirt. You slowly squeeze the dropper and let the drugs enter your veins. I did speed using that method, and it was like kissing the face of God back then. Jimmy took out some heroin and did a dropper full. He left me some in the cooker, the bottle cap where he mixed heroin with water. I did half a dropper, and when that puppy hit my brain, all the worries and fears left me. Instantly, I realized my new passion, copping heroin. Damn. There was also blue morphine and other similar drugs to kill the pain. These turned out to be the God I was searching for all my life. Artie, another junkie, loved doing smack too. At parties, we would line up like kids waiting for the treat, and he would hit us with a needle. We called him the doctor. One day we were walking down the street, high as a kite on speed, when Artie spotted 2 guitars inside a car. After we grabbed the guitars from the back of the seat and ran around the corner, the police car was waiting for us, tipped off by an anonymous caller. Jail time number 2. Another 30 days to serve. That's messed up. They booked us for larceny, stealing over $100 worth of stuff. Every time I went to jail, my attitude worsened. I realized that this was becoming a pattern or ritual, and I hated it. I hung out with a proverbial troublemaker. It's a good word. Eddie Lucier, who spent every winter in jail and every summer outside. He was always in trouble and always got me into trouble. Even when you are free, you may still be confined. I remember watching The Birdman of Alcatraz, starring Burt Lancaster. In the reaction room one night, Eddie kicked over an ashtray near me and yelled some profanities. The screw guard came over to me and told me to get up. They placed me in solitary for 2 weeks. That night I knew there was no such thing as justice in jail. Every Wednesday and Friday were visiting days, but I never got a visit. Once again, I had some of the inmates help me with my reading and writing. I also made drumsticks out of duct tape and popsicle sticks and played music with some of the others, mostly kids like me in their late teens and early 20s. One morning I woke up and doubled over with severe stomach pain. I thought I was just having withdrawal symptoms. I complained to the screws, but they didn't care a bit. For 3 days I was in extreme agony, yet no one came to help. I freaked out, throwing everything in my cell out into the corridor. I kept screaming, "I'm dying, help me." Still, no one responded. I'd been puking yellow bile for days. The pain was so bad that I wanted to die. I put my head in the toilet until I passed out. When I woke up, the doctor was pushing on my stomach, and each time he did so, I screamed loudly. The doctor told the guards to get me to the hospital immediately, as I heard him say I didn't have much time. Here it was, I thought, the end of the line. As they drove me to the hospital, the nurses kept asking me family information. I told them to get away from me since I wondered why my family even mattered. I was given Demerol, Demerol, to calm me down, and as I looked at the end of my bed, there stood 2 more doctors and a priest. I knew I was dying. The doctor asked me to tell him the truth about taking drugs. I told him I had not taken any since I started my sentence 6 days ago. He told me that my appendix had burst and my body was full of poison. They would do everything in their power to save me. They then proceeded to prep me for surgery. The priest followed behind my stretcher, saying prayers out loud. When I woke up, I was in such unbelievable pain, I could hardly stand it. I had tubes in my nose and IVs everywhere. I also had a guard outside my room, as if I were going anywhere. My mouth was very dry. I needed water badly. Then I sensed that someone was there putting straw in my mouth. It was my Aunt Pat, who stood there crying, unable to talk. I just stared at her, as if trying to say things will be all right. With her daughter Janice standing behind her, Aunt Pat kept telling me that she loved me, and then gave me a wooden cross from Bethlehem, putting it around my neck and kissing me. From that moment on, I started recovering, and to this day, still carry that cross with me. Since I could barely walk, they began giving me instant physical therapy. I remember trying to go for a walk with these little paper slippers, shooshings, shooshing, shooshing, oh, shushing, okay, shushing all over the hospital. I can still hear those slippers crunching on the hospital floor. One time I heard my name on the loudspeaker to return to my room, so I swished back. Maybe it is swishing. No, it's not. Continuing. I swished back as quickly as I could. The next day, they shipped me back to jail. When I saw Artie, I told him what had happened to me. Another inmate came up to me and said I was a sissy. After telling him to shut up, he punched me really hard in the gut. Falling to the floor, Artie helped me back up to my cell. Welcome back. With my life threatened, what could I expect? This was jail. Once I got released from jail, I went back to my room at Isabel's. My friends were unusually quiet the moment I caught up with them. When I asked them what was wrong, they said they had some speed but thought maybe I should chill. I told them I'd be the judge of that and started shooting the stuff. I was one day out of jail and at it again. Anxious for more kicks and highs, I went out with a cute hippie couple named Sheila and Bill in order to smoke dope and drink beer. Bill had the cool car in town and souped up Chevy Impala. We drove to the sand pits, a secluded place where we could party without being disturbed. Bill, who with Sheila only did grass and alcohol, was so high that he laid rubber in front of Burger King. Sure enough, a policeman pulled us over, having given Bill and Sheila my works and drugs to hide up front. I was pleasantly stoned and mellow, thinking this was Bill's problem, not mine. The cop approached the car and asked Billy where he had been that night. He politely answered, "Just riding around, sir." Then he flashed his light on me and said something like, "Mr. Steiger, what do you know?" This guy happened to be the biggest jerk on the Greenfield police force, which had it in for me. When he ordered me out of the car, I said, "No, what's the problem?" He said that if I didn't, they would get a search warrant. I immediately said, "I haven't done anything. Go ahead." But after thinking about it, I reluctantly got out, not wanting to draw attention to Bill and Sheila, since they had a stash with them. I did this not knowing that the cops already knew I had a fat doobie behind my ear. Damn, that's tough. Suddenly, the cop who liked hassling me reached behind my ear and pulled out a joint and held it in front of my face. He kept saying, "We have you now. What have we here?" To which I abruptly answered, "Marijuana." Then, in one quick swoop, I quickly grabbed the joint out of his hand, and after managing to collect enough saliva in an air-dry mouth, swallowed it, choking. After telling Billy to get the hell out of here, they forcibly pushed me over to the curb and proceeded to beat my head against the sidewalk to dislodge the object. God damn. Failing to do so, they handcuffed me backwards so it would hurt me more. They threw me on the floor of the cruiser and began kicking and punching me all the way to the station. God damn. Once there, they booked me on several charges. While this was occurring, some of the cops must have urinated all over my cell because I found it everywhere. The next morning, I went before the judge looking like a junkie out of dope, torn clothing, beaten up, and hung over. The judge read the charges against me, which were drunkenness, disorderly conduct, and possession of marijuana. Then, pausing, he said, "Because the defendant ate the evidence, we have nothing to go on." The judge chuckled, and everyone in the courtroom let out a roaring laugh. I was, however, fined $175 for the other two charges, and if I couldn't pay the $30 minimum, I would go back to jail until I did. Fortunately for me, I had $35, so life on the outside would go on. About a month later, a bunch of us were pulled over while riding through town one night. I cringed when I saw Stockwell, Stockwell, a state trooper who was friends with the Greenfield cop that liked giving me trouble, coming toward the car. I guess word was out to get Steiger. There's really no need to mention all the times I was unnecessarily hassled, but this occasion deserves some explaining. As I expected, Stockwell let everyone else go, but cuffed me because he found a jackknife in my back pocket. I was tipping my tripping my brains out and couldn't answer any of his questions. He took me on a hell ride, his lights flashing as he drove down the Mohawk Trail, going about 100. I remember mumbling to him, "It's okay if you let me out here." And then he sped up more. Like, why is the cop speeding? For no reason. He brought me in the holding cell, where it was freezing cold. They didn't give me a blanket, but halfway through the night I was given one. I made my phone call to my ex-girlfriend, Holly, and she bailed me out. The remaining balance of my fine could not be paid by the due date, so I called my and told him about the situation and that I wanted to come back to Worcester. He called his dad. So he came out to Greenfield and paid off my fine. The police were extremely happy that I was finally leaving town. Now, I would be heading back to Eddie, Sue, Bookie, Beanie, and the rest of the tribe. Chapter 6. The New Crew. I'm going to find me a wife. A woman will fix my hurt. As soon as I started to feel the pain, we can bury it in the dirt. Chapter 6. Page 45. The return to Worcester was actually a welcome rest for me. I got a job and was just smoking weed. Slowly, an addict gets bored and goes back to the chaos of the using life. I started sniffing the degreaser from the machine I operated for a rush. God damn. Quite often, my employer would send me home thinking I was sick. While walking around Elm Park one day, I noticed two teenagers, no older than 60, shivering on a bench. I asked them what the problem was, and they said that they were dope sick. I asked them if they knew where the cop. When they said yes, we were off to Kirby Street, a heavy drug dealing area, to buy some heroin. I bought a couple of big spoons and gave them enough to get high, and I did the rest. They had to carry me out of the house, thinking I was going to overdose. I gave them a number to call, and a buddy came to pick me up. Heroin never left for long. Eddie and Sue had no idea that I was shooting dope. Sue was working in a pizza shop, and Eddie was doing odd jobs around Worcester. Even though I was living with them again, I didn't see them very much. I was 18 years old, and though it was 1969, for me, the times were not changing. I was given the chance to go to an outward bond type school in New Hampshire to learn how to read and write better. When it was time to sign up, I brought Eddie with me and told them to take Eddie instead. I figured he had more of an opportunity than me to make good on it. I visited him once and learned he had been doing well in the program. I tried using my almighty willpower with drugs and alcohol. A few reds, a couple joints, and a 6-pack of beer would do my willpower great good. The only time I felt spiritual and comfortable without medicating myself was while playing drums. I fell in love with Ginger Baker, a double bass drummer, with Jack Bruce and Eric Clapton, who was well-known speed freak. I began getting more and more compliments on my playing. Eddie and Sue would come into my room and watch me practice. As siblings, we were still close. Eddie was at the age where he would dare Sue and I to do this or that. I remember one winter day when he dared us to go outside and roll in the snow. After we refused, I told him he didn't have the guts to do it either. So he ran outside in his underwear, jumping up and down in the snow while laughing our heads off. We locked the doors so he couldn't come back inside. Finally, before he kicked the door down, I let him in. He was swearing and shaking at the same time. Sue almost wet her pants laughing so hard. I love watching Sue laugh more than anything in the world. If you are reading this, Eddie, sorry about that. On Christmas, my father would perform his magic. Barbara, a school teacher, was also a talented painter. whose holiday artwork beautifully decorated the home. We had some good times, and as will happen on occasion for an addict, things calm down. But unless drugs are totally out of your life, serenity is always temporary. I was still smoking weed and being a weekend warrior. The heroin was gone for the most part, but I was substituting again. I was relying on willpower. Page 47. I had no intention to stop. It was willpower to slow down, never to quit. Quitting wasn't an option. My quest was to achieve the perfect high. Great poem, by the way. Shel Silverstein, The Perfect High. My quest was to achieve the perfect high, whether it be acid, ludes, or smack. My family knew I was drinking a lot, but they figured I'd just fit into the family lineage. Looking for answers and right living would not change the suicide of my soul. When you have nothing to lose, the answers are easy to choose. I met a guy at work by the name of Al Purtle, Purtle. I always carried a pint of brandy on me and gave him a hit one day. After that, we went out for beers when our workday ended. He told me he was in Vietnam and had many men he killed, and how many men he killed. I told him about my 4F status. Wonder what that is, 4F? My 4F status, and that I wasn't going to the slaughterhouse, which was taking so many lives and screwing up so many people's heads. Al was one of those who would never be the same again. I felt there were so many traps to fall into in this country that no one needed to go to Vietnam and kill people and then get all screwed up. Al Purtle and I became party pals, hanging out together, going to bars and partying like there was no tomorrow. Al seemed to have a death wish. He drank a lot more than I did. I met a couple of his friends, Franny and another crazy party animal, and Dennis Brown, a real hippie from California. We would party over at Al's apartment constantly. One time, we were on a 5-day binge. 4F, registrant, not qualified military service. 4F status, registrant, not qualified military service. Thank you for that. Al used to give me a hard time. Let me rewind for a little bit. One time we were on a 5-day binge, and we were both fired. I never told these guys, maybe it was we were both fried. I never told these guys about my heroin habit, but would sneak out and cop a shot in the bathroom or anywhere they weren't. Al used to give me a hard time for always throwing up whenever we partied. If he only knew. Franny asked me where I was going going one day. I was drunk enough to tell him. He wanted to try it, but I said it probably wasn't a good idea. He said he had $200 on him. It instantly became a good idea. That's so messed up. During this binge, Al came into the kitchen where Dennis and I were drinking and made an announcement that he was going to pick up his new girlfriend and nobody was to go near her. We didn't care about her until she made such a strong prohibition regarding our treatment of his woman. He actually generated interest by his demand and would come over to the house and sit in the kitchen next to Al and not move all night. Every Friday night, she did the same thing. One night, I was going to the fridge to get a beer, and she was sitting there by herself. I saw some grass sticking out of her pocketbook and proceeded to ask her to come party in the other room. I took her by the hand, and she came in and partied. This proved my insanity. I was putting the make on Al's girl. We ended up lying on the couch all night and talked a while. Al sat across from us, passed out in the recliner. I really connected with Anne because she had a gentleness about her that was really endearing. I didn't care what Al said. I was going to get to know this woman better. Exclamation mark. I then moved in with a friend of Al's whose name was Linda. My heroin use was around $50 a day. Holy shit. Linda knew Anne well and used to ask me if I liked her. Back then, that's a lot of money too. When I said sure, Linda told me to call Anne, and so I did. Anne came over one day, and we partied smoking joints and drinking rum. Following that experience, she started coming over to see me more often. Al came over to our place one night after I had taken some acid and asked me to go for a ride. By then, Anne and Steve were in the back seat of the car. I climbed in front with Al, and we roared off down the road. I looked at Anne and saw that she'd been crying. Al drove onto the highway and floored it, while mumbling something to himself about women. He yelled, "Let's all die, motherfuckers," and headed toward the guardrail. Jesus! I screamed as loud as I could, and right before we hit the rail, Al swerved back into the lane, laughing and swearing. We headed to the package store and then went back to Al's. We all needed a drink after that. Holy shit. I had no idea what was going to happen next, but when you're using, you don't really look beyond the moment. Al was across the room from me when he reached down and grabbed the quart bottle of rum at his feet. He gulped down the last of the contents, then whinged it at my head. I ducked before the bottle smashed the wall behind me. He came at me with everything he had. I stood there without moving, not even raising my arms in defense. He put his fist through the plaster of the wall next to me and started screaming in my face like a drill sergeant. There was foam caked to the corners of his mouth, and he was spitting at me. I stood there without budging, expressionless and stoic. I was waiting to feel his hands around my throat or a knife in my gut. Whatever the case, I knew this was the end of the line. Suddenly, Al turned away and walked over to the fridge to get a beer. That was it. He stumbled into the living room and sat down, and from then on, never mentioned Anne and me again. In fact, he gave me a ride every now and then to pick her up. What? Anne and I moved in together. Holy shit. And after a year, we were married by the Justice of the Peace at her parents' house. Wow. We were only 20 years old, but before our marriage, I finally broke down one night and told her I used heroin. She said she understood and that we would deal with that in time. At a party in Al's apartment, Anne told me that she wanted to try heroin, but I said that wouldn't be a good thing to do. But she said if I didn't shoot her up, she would have Dennis or some other guy do it. Therefore, I agreed to do it. Her parents blamed me for getting her hooked, but I knew if it wasn't me who hit her, one of the other guys would have done so. I felt she was safer getting it from me. Our married days turned into doing a bag of dope and then listening to the Moody Blues. Anne was from a very straight-laced family. Her father was a postmaster general. Her mother was a proverbial housewife. What's a postmaster general? It's like a post office guy? They had no idea about this life their daughter had entered. And this is a picture of Donnie playing the drums in a rock band, 1969. Damn, he had hair. Look at the Donator. Give you a closer pic. Show my Instagram real quick. That's Donnie. I'm not going to show you every picture, but there he is. If you want to see all the other pictures in the book, buy the book on Amazon. Chapter 7. Family Matters. It could be a double entendre. Family Matters or Family Matters, like the matters of a family. Let's dive into this. Page 51. I'm going to settle down, but just not today. I have not got it yet. I do things the same old way. Family life requires income, so I got a job at Norton's, one of the most prosperous factories in Massachusetts, and made out the application for me, since my writing was horrible. I leveled with a guy on the interview and told him I was newly married and wanted to settle down in the area, and had heard about signing up for low-income families who wanted to buy a house. We found a home we could purchase through this program in Oxford, Massachusetts, the birthplace of Clara Barton. No way. Oxford's the town over. After we moved in and asked me if I wanted children, I told her I was having a hard enough time taking care of myself, never mind any kid. She assured me it would be all right, and so we had 2 children, 3 years apart. Dennis and Fran would still come over occasionally and do a bag of heroin, but for the most part, I was trying to chill out. I knew I needed my job at Norton's and that there was no quicker way to lose it than to be hanging out with guys like Dennis and Fran. It was around this time that I got a call from Eddie saying Dad was in a major bike accident near his house in nearby Spencer, Massachusetts. He had hit a tree going about 50. Page 52. When I arrived at the hospital, nobody but the nurse were in the room. He was a total mess with tubes and IVs everywhere. It seems that they were having trouble keeping the brace on him of his broken arms. On one of his broken arms. They even tried his arm to the side of the bed so that he couldn't reach down and take it off. What they didn't know was that Dad is a magician who kept finding ways to get untangled. Dad had been living alone at the camp and was in the process of divorcing Barbara. When they finally released him from the hospital, I took him back to Oxford to nurse him back to health. He was frail and weak, sounding like he'd given up on life. After a few good months, though, he was up and around, working with wood again and building different things. I continued to stay in his life, helping them fix up the camp while he healed. The domestic life was becoming attractive to me, and had out our first child, Jessie, when I was 24. I was in the delivery room when she gave birth, and found it to be one of the most incredible experiences of my life. Nothing can make everything in this dumb world seem so irrelevant than staring at your own child. I ran down the hallway of the hospital, yelling and screaming like I'd won the lottery. To me, it was as if I had. I was still drinking and drugging, of course, but had learned how to play the game. I began feeling lazy and bloated, overweight and flabby. I remember sitting in my living room, smoking my brains out, watching Rocky, and doing that, I decided to try to get into shape. Beginning with 1-mile jogs around my neighborhood, I started becoming more and more interested in getting healthy, even stopping to smoke dope. I recall watching the runner Bill Rogers on television. He became my mentor, so I tried to do everything he did. I heard he ate pizza for breakfast, so that's what I did too. I wanted to get back to the way I felt while running track in high school. The one trouble, I wallowed in self-pity when I didn't do well. I was constantly beating myself up for not being perfect. This attitude made me increase my alcohol consumption. I learned that there was a popular road race in Worcester called Charlie's Surplus 10-miler, and that Bill Rogers would be there. I called my father to tell him I was going to run a race in Worcester. To my surprise, he came and watched his son do well. This was another highlight of my life, having my father attend an event in which I was involved. My wife was there with Jessie, now 4 years old. By now, I was 28 years old and had come a long way physically. I ran the race in the 63 minutes and finished in the top 10 percentile. Holy shit! 10 miles in 63 minutes? That's not too shabby. My name was in the local paper, and this got me back into running life. My nickname at work was always Staggering Don, for my unique way of slumbering around the shop. But after the race, they called me the runner instead. My drinking was picking up around this time. It always seemed to be. Train hard, play hard. One of the neighbors, a real nice man named Dick, used to time me when I ran. Physically, I was in my prime, but mentally, I was using more pills and alcohol to escape reality. Then I pulled a hamstring and was on the crutches for 3 months. The doctor gave me a prescription for Procodan, Percodan, Percodan. I began my pill popping again. Anne was miserable, throwing stuff at me and begging me to hit her. I think he doesn't mean like physically hit her, but like shoot her up with heroin. A Postmaster General is the Chief Executive Officer of the United States Postal Service. Okay. No worries. What's up, Endra? Just reading this book here. It had been years. Oh, excuse me, let me rewind a little bit. Okay. Anne was miserable, throwing stuff at me and begging me to hit her. Some nights I did. I saw the battling of my parents reflected in my own home. Anne then proceeded to tell me she was pregnant again. She had her second child, a beautiful girl we named Amy. Again, I thought my life was now going to be the everlasting peace for which I had always yearned. It was around this time that Anne answered the phone one night and told me it was a nurse asking for the son of Sue Steiger. It had been years since I spoke to anyone even remotely involved in my mother's life. I reluctantly took the call and found out my mother had been shot point blank in the stomach. Holy shit. The nurse said my mother needed a place to recuperate, a place where someone could take good care of her. She's still alive from that? His mother survived a lot of things now. It seemed Eddie, Sue, and my father had already refused to take her in, and I told the nurse, never could I. I felt disgusted that things had gone so badly in my life with Mom that I could not agree to nurse her back to health. I just didn't have the desire to let her back into my life again. That is crazy. Shortly after this, Anne threw a Christmas party at our house. Our neighbor, Dick... Let me make sure I didn't skip a page. Yep, page 54. Shortly after this, Anne threw a Christmas party at our house. Our neighbor Dick brought a guest with him named Jesse, and I instantly knew he was high on heroin. Excuse me. When I asked, he told me where he got it, so I crept out the back door and went to cop. That night set up the compulsion for drugs, and I was off and running, so to speak, for the next week. Now I had a new partner in crime, one who was young and vibrant and full of energy. He loved the drug scene particularly as much as the drugs themselves. We started robbing drugstores at night, driving around during the day with a trunk full of drugs. My wife figured I was on a booze binge and would snap out of it in a few days. I was beginning to give up on the life I had created. I remember taking the cross off my neck that Aunt Pat had given me in the prison hospital and mailing it to her, because it made me feel too shameful all the time. One night, after a heated argument, I called a friend of Anne's to ask her what she thought I should do. I didn't want to lose my family and realize that these fights had to end. I would not hurt Anne, but I did use force and slapped her on occasion. She told me I should go into detox to get off drugs. I went to Adcare Hospital in Worcester to clean up for a couple of weeks. That is crazy. I've used to work at Adkira Hospital in Worcester. That's wild. I left that place worse than when I went in. They gave me more drugs than I was taking on the outside. Damn. Methadone in the day and tranquilizers at night. I started hiding the night pills in the curtain hinges. I hated feeling like a zombie and thought this place was a joke. Damn. I stayed for 2 weeks and had a bag of heroin waiting for me when I left. This was the beginning of the lowest point of my life, and I didn't even have a clue. I was so strung out that I did something I thought I would never do: sell my drums. Things got bad really quickly. Jesse was still drugging and would swing by my work, take my order, and meet me afterwards, well supplied. Slowly I began getting back to daily using. I felt like my life was coming to an end. It scared the hell out of me. I went to my sister, in whom I had not confided in a long time, telling her I was so screwed up. She just looked at me with these sad eyes and said she didn't know how to help me. Without any help, it kept getting worse and worse. My stealing was becoming more serious, and that I would go into the Norton plant and at night with a security uniform on, looking like one of the guards. I'd bring the guard in the booth a cup of coffee, mumbling something, and he'd let me walk by. I proceeded to make my way over to the diamond cutting wheels and fill my bag. My fence would give me $300 a pop for the wheels, and that would buy me a lot of dope. I was stealing everything I could get my hands on. The cutting wheels were always in high demand in the auto body shops, and I never had any trouble getting rid of them. The fear of getting caught was increasing, and in a weird way, I almost wish I would. I stole over $200,000 worth of materials. Holy smokes. Wow. $200,000 worth of materials from Norton's, and it all went into my arm. That's crazy. One night after work, I overdosed on some bad stuff. After I made a nice big hit for myself, I had been up for days celebrating my birthday and copped some drugs off a guy I didn't know. It was some dude who hung out on the street corner where I worked. By the grace of God, I didn't give in the same burn. I am not sure what I put into my veins to this day. Rat poison? Horse tranquilizer? Whatever. The room began getting fuzzy and I got bad sick. Not the good sick of heroin. Anne rushed me to the hospital, and on the way went by my place of work. In a move that can only describe her character, she was demanding my money back, which she did get, while I was dying in the car and also trying to figure out what he had given me, but he himself didn't even know. When she was done screaming at this guy, she took me into Memorial Hospital in Worcester and helped me walk into the emergency room. The admitting nurse asked her what was wrong, and she frantically said he overdosed on some bad stuff, and then dumped me into a wheelchair. I collapsed momentarily, then woke up scared, kicking and screaming. They strapped me down and shouted at me, "What have you taken?" But I didn't know, nor did Anne. I somewhat remember a cop asking me repeatedly what I had taken. I heard them, but could not answer. They got frustrated and left, and finally so did Anne. I lay on a table for what seemed like 3 hours before they made me drink what I think was IPECAC. IPECAC. It was supposed to make me puke. Afterwards, I started tripping out, seeing angels appearing from the ceiling. I saw old friends come and talk to me, believing they were actually there. When they asked me to party with them, I told them I couldn't because I was in the hospital. Following the strange ordeal, I at least thought about chilling out again. Jesse left for Boston to buy drugs, and the turmoil calmed down a little. I got a band together, thinking it would break my obsession to use. My brother Eddie was already working in a popular band around Worcester called Zonkaraz. A few friends and I met Eddie for dinner one night. I introduced him to Barbara, one of my musician friends. They hit it off well and were later married. No way. They even had twins, and Anne and I would go over to see our nieces, Debbie and Kathy, all the time. The drugs came back into my life slowly, as they always do. When you think you can use socially, Anne's habit was also increasing. But all in all, with the kids, the house, and the band, I was keeping busy and feeling pretty good. And there's a picture here. My first child, Jesse, and myself in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Early 1970s. That's crazy. Donnie with the long hair. Can't even imagine that. And there's some more pictures. Detox located in the building on the right. Worcester State Hospital Detox Unit. That's ad care, isn't it? That's wild. And in shape, there's another picture of him running in the annual Charlie's Surplus Mother's Day 10-miler. You know? Black and white pictures. It's pretty cool though. And that is the end of chapter 7. We'll pick up next time on chapter 8. The walls coming tumbling down. I'll read the poem to end us off for the night. It was only a matter of distance. It was only a matter of time. Until I've learned my lesson, these walls, I'll stay behind. Phenomenal read. Phenomenal. We'll pick up next time, chapter 8. If you enjoyed this reading, of course, leave a like and comment down below. What else? What other books you'd like us to read? I got a long list of books. Long list of books. You can't see this on YouTube, but on my Instagram, I'm going to show you guys. That's like the list. And then I got a lot more books on the shelf over here. So, a long list of books and a bunch of my trash too, so ignore that. But yeah, long list of books. Very, very exciting things coming to the future. Hope you guys enjoyed the book reading so far, and I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your night. If you remember anything at all, you're gorgeous, all right? Stay beautiful, stay healthy, stay positive, all right? Make wise decisions. Peace out, Girl Scouts. Have a good night. Me up is your loving soul. And every time that I come home, I get to see you in your fancy clothes. But if it's time ever has to come to an end, don't you cry, just smile because it happened. That's our family, you plus me with a barbecue in the backyard. Bunch of crazy kids that's running around, and that's our family, you plus me. a cowboy free. Barbecue in the backyard, bunch of crazy kids that's running around. I'm a cowboy living like a rock star. I've been really low, almost made it to the top, but I came up short. But I'll never give up, no, I'm gonna go far. I'll do it for the ones that never made it at all. I've been really high, I've been really low, almost made it to the top, but I came up short. But I'll never give up, no, I'm gonna go far. I'll do it for the ones that never made it at all. That's our family, you plug